this episode of Grief in Common, we mention suicide, COVID, and death throughout. Hi, welcome to this episode of Grief in Common by Winston's Wish. Today we're going to be talking about grief at university. My name's Annabelle, I'm 23, and I lost my dad 2.5 years ago whilst in my second year at university. I was affected so much by my loss that I was withdrawn from that university at the end of the year for how bad my grades were affected. I'm now at a different uni, just finishing my second year here and very much still carrying my grief with me. My guest today is Abigail. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, I'm Abigail, as Annabelle just said. I am 19. I've just finished my first year at university. I'm doing a dance degree, and I lost my sister 6 years ago when I was 13 and she was 27. I was in secondary school at the time that she passed, and it was a whole whirlwind of emotions and not really knowing how I felt. And then the grief, I didn't really feel it up until I moved to uni and I was away from home. So all of a sudden, it feels like I'm grieving all over again because I've now realised how far away from home I am, and just learning how to deal with it again, but now that I'm on my own a bit more.
Obviously, you said moving out was kind of like really, really difficult. That's something I found as well, because you're away from the rest of your family and everyone else who knew that person. How do you manage to keep your sister with you in that kind of sense?
I definitely do talk about her a lot more now. I still struggle with the question of how many siblings do you have? Obviously, uni, you're meeting so many new people and everyone's trying to get to know everyone. So it's always a question that comes up. All my flatmates and my mates know, they're absolutely lovely about it. It was around her birthday and her death anniversary are 2 weeks apart. So coming up to those dates, I was a bit more down and my flatmates noticed. And yeah, I kept up with little traditions and spoke to my mum and my dad about it. It is weird, definitely, having to meet new people and introduce yourself, and sometimes you don't know whether to include that part or not. Yeah, how was it for you?
I think definitely like the concept of someone's like birthday and anniversary. So for me, my dad's birthday is November 7th and he died on November 8th. So it's this kind of like 48-hour period where everyone around me kind of is like, okay, we're going to just give you a bit of space. But it's the same thing like being so far away from home and getting in touch with the rest of your family. But it's because it's a difficult time for everyone, but it's everyone else can be sort of near each other. You're 100 miles away type thing. So I'm always like, I text to like each of my siblings, like always like speak to my mum and stuff. But it's kind of, do you ever have it where you just feel like no one is getting you when you're away at university and you're like, all you want is someone to be like, no, it's okay, I understand you?
Yeah, no, I do definitely get that. Especially when others talk about their siblings back home. I was like, oh yeah, my brother's doing this right now, or I'm going home to see these people. And it's like, yeah, I can't relate to you. I really want to, especially when people, because my sister was older than me, so when people talk about their older siblings, and yeah, it's definitely, I never really felt that before until uni, and it was more of a conversation because everyone's missing home and everyone's missing their families, that you then around it more. I have a feeling on my actual sister's anniversary, I had like a competition or some type of dance event, which I just had to focus for. Her birthday, I went out clubbing that night because friends were up, and it was a really good distraction.
So for me, a lot of it is when you do tell someone, they have this automatic thing of like, oh, I'm really sorry. And then you're like just kind of stuck in the conversation then. Whereas a lot of time I meant it as like a passing comment, especially at university when there's so much going on. For me, I sort of feel like I have to let people know. But at the same time, it sort of is difficult to gauge other people, how they're going to react to it. Obviously for me, like I said before, I was at one university and then I was withdrawn from my course because I failed the year. But that basically that entire time I was like asking for support, asking for some help, asking if I can redo work that I'd missed. And I kept getting this thing of like, oh, we'll sort it later. Oh, no, you can't do that, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm at this new university and they've been so good with me, whether it's like I had a deadline that was like on my dad's anniversary and they were like, oh, we'll just move it, no questions asked. Or if I'm like, I'm having a bit of a bad day, I've missed this class, but this is why it is. So I was just wondering, what's your kind of experience with having to tell people that aren't just making friends at university, if that makes sense?
With like lecturers, I honestly don't think I've told anyone. Around like this spring, it probably would have been a good idea because I just know that I wasn't focused at all, because I felt it more on her birthday than I did the anniversary. I don't know why. I think I was more numb to it. It was almost like my flatmates knew what day it was and I was acting completely normal. But then it's still there. That's another thing is it's still a shock to me that I'm feeling it 6 years down the line. Like, it feels like I shouldn't be. It feels like I should have done all my grieving when I was 13 and when it first happened, and then I had all my secondary school teachers around. So now it's almost like, do I tell people and get that support, because it doesn't feel as relevant to me. But I feel like since knowing how this year's gone, I might have to give the uni a heads up of April, May, expect me to be a bit iffy, and then I'm fine for the rest of the year.
Because it's such a weird thing of like, every university has that support in place for whatever problem you might have, but a lot of it is looking for it and asking for it's really difficult. So that's kind of like the only bit of advice I would give like anyone ever is the support is there, just like look for it and ask for it. But it is so hard to do. So my dad was a driving instructor, so he always had like a really like obnoxiously bright car to teach people to drive in. They were so ugly. They were great cars, but they were just ugly. And someone that lives just around the corner from us has the same one. And I remember I saw that last week and I was like, oh, that really like got me. And so it's kind of the thing that is difficult for me is when people don't have any experience of a loss like this, is they can't relate to, or maybe why that would be a sort of a shock to the system.
One of my friends, bless her, she'll be absolutely okay with me saying this, hasn't really had to deal with anything like that. So she is great. She will sit and listen to me talk about it, and I will be like stressing, saying like, do you get what I mean? She's like, no, but it's okay, because like you're making sense to yourself. There are certain things like my sister's name. If I hear someone else called her name, it's a little bit, takes you back, and oh, okay. Especially because I don't hear it that often, seeing as my family, we don't really speak much about it. Another thing is, so my sister lived in Liverpool. So obviously she was 27, pretty much had her own life. She was in Liverpool and I am more down on the south coast, and God knows how long that drive is. But I've moved to uni like smack bang in the middle, and I'm closer, so it's easier to go up there if I wanted to, but she's not there. So it's like I finally can drive now, and I've moved closer, and I have the opportunity to go see her, but she isn't there. Obviously, I was like really young and I couldn't wait to spend more time with her and wait until I was old enough to go out shopping with her. So yeah, definitely being closer to Liverpool is a really weird feeling, and I wanted to drive up at some point, but again, never got around to it. Something is making me not want to do the drive.
Yeah, I think having a place or like a thing that was theirs, whether it was like a physical thing or just something you associated with them, is something that's really helped me. Because I mean, I have like a framed photo of my dad, and if I ever get flowers or whatever, that they always like sit next to that. But I kept a lot of his like jackets and coats and stuff, because he was like a little short, he's like 5'2", so he always everything was like always massively oversized on him. So I have a lot of them now. So if I'm ever like, oh, I'm a bit down, whatever, I can put one of them on. So I was wondering if you have anything like that you kind of like keep with you.
I have a photo album of photos from when she was younger. So, because she's my half sister and we didn't grow up in the same household, it's all photos from when she was a kid, and that's really nice to look at as well because I obviously wasn't there for it. And there's a couple of those photos where my parents are in with her, and it's nice to feel like she was more of a part of our family, than maybe it used to seem because she was so far from us. After she passed away, her mum sent down a box full of loads of her stuff, a bunch of letters that she had wrote back and forth to my dad, and more photos, some little ornaments, and just things from her bedroom, and this little, I don't know what animal it is, but it is really cute.
It looks sort of like halfway between a rabbit and a dog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sits on my shelf. He doesn't come to uni because I like to know it's at home and safe. Oh, and she came to stay down a year or a couple before she passed away, and she was smoking in my dad's flat and burnt a hole through the duvet set with the ashes from the cigarette. And my dad's kept that duvet set for years after, and he's cleared out the house, and his partner now cut out the section of the duvet cover where the little burn mark is, because I told him he could never get rid of it, and framed it in this really cute little frame and little love hearts and a letter J for her name in there. So I took that back up to uni because that was on my birthday, and I thought that was one of the most thoughtful birthday presents someone could have got me. I show it to my friends and they think, what the is this?
That's so lovely though, because I mean, you said it's like a lot of people are like, what is that? And you said before one of your friends was like, oh, I don't get it, but it's okay. And I think that's obviously like all my friends who knew me then versus and know me now have said like, oh, you're such a different person. And like, but it's okay though, because you've been through something that most people in our age range wouldn't understand and won't understand. Yeah, so what kind of things do you do to look after yourself?
Being so close with the girls that I live with is definitely really helpful. We're all really comfortable with each other, and I know that if I just come out of my room, sit in the kitchen, someone's cooking dinner, and it's just having someone else there. We don't even need to talk. The girls are great at giving hugs. If they see that something's a little bit off, it's like, do you need a hug? Don't ask any questions, just I'll be there for you if you need it. Other than that, I think just kind of be like the opposite and taking time for myself in my room, listening to music, put like little fairy lights on and just kind of calm the place down. I have a weighted blanket, which is amazing. If you are stressing, it is like the best thing. I highly recommend it. I think another self-care thing is going for a drive, always. Especially living at uni, I don't have my mom asking me where I'm going. I can just get in my car and go somewhere. And I think that's what I did on her birthday. I just looked for a viewpoint. So there's one 15-minute drive from where I live up there, and it has the most gorgeous sunsets. And I just went there, sat for a bit, had my music on, and yeah, it just gives you a chance to think about things. Yeah.
I think I'm very much the same, that you kind of you surrounding yourself with people like this unspoken thing of like, no, we've got you, we'll sit with you. If you want to talk about that, that's fine, but if you just want to sit and be, that's okay as well. A lot of the time I'm in the camp of, oh, I just want to be on my own and listen to my music, because I've always had it where people would be like, oh my god, you've got the music taste of like a middle-aged man, and I've just basically just copied my dad's music taste, is what I'm kind of realizing. Like if you go through my Spotify, it's none of it's like there's a lot of like Taylor Swift, but a lot of it is stuff that he would have been listening to when he was a teenager. So it's a really nice way for me to connect with him while also kind of taking time to myself. I don't drive, but what I do now is I kind of, and it's based on something I saw on TikTok, where it's like someone was like, oh, I look for the person I lost in the skies. And that's something I've been doing recently, especially with how bad the weather's been recently. It keeps making like really pretty skies. And I'm always like snapping a photo and being like, yeah, that's something for me.
My camera roll is sunset sky. Yeah.
But it's just so like crazy to me that it's something I saw on a TikTok and I went, oh, that actually like, I think I could do that. And now I've got this album with like a couple of hundred in there. But it is just a thing of, I'm going to do this for myself, and no one around me really needs to know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. But it's just something for me to go, okay, that's fine.
I think you saying about how that's for yourself and something that you know, but not necessarily other people. I've got a tattoo on my ribs, which is 3 butterflies, and I literally got it like a year ago this week. It was my first one, really painful. And people always ask like, oh, what does it mean? And oh, it's pretty. It's a photo I found on Pinterest and I absolutely loved it. But there is like a hidden meaning that you don't know whether to tell people or not. I usually do, but I probably speak really quickly and just kind of get it out of the way. But ever since my sister passed away, I would see a white butterfly in the garden, like no other butterfly, just this one. And it started to become a regular thing that I thought, maybe I'm just going to associate that with her. We do have a plant pot in our garden with some of her ashes at the bottom. We replace the flowers every year. And like when it circles in that area, it's just, some people might think, oh my gosh, that's a really crazy idea. But to you, it feels like it resonates with that. So yeah. So the butterflies have a hidden meaning, but
but not everyone needs to know that.
No.
And that's fine.
It makes it a bit nicer as well to know that it's more special to you.
When I was first at university, when my dad was still with us, something that would happen every Wednesday, because I played rugby at university, every Wednesday after a game, I would always ring him and speak to him. It'd be like a recap of the game, recap of like the entire day, because university sport is like your entire day is just an event. But it was like every game without fail, I'd be like, this is how I did, this is how the team did. And he'd be like, oh, that's so good. And then we just have like a recap of the week. So it was our like weekly check-in. Both of us had this big love for rugby and it would tie us in. So now, still playing, but he's not here. What I do now, every Wednesday night, I write to him now is something I do. And so I have this like, it's like a kid's money box where it's like just got the tiny little slit on the top and you have to fold up the paper really small, but it's just something that kind of blends in my room. So no one ever really knows what it is. But it's just my kind of way to still check in with him, because I think that's one of the most difficult things for me, is that you have this weekly tradition and then suddenly it's not here and you go, oh, I really want to tell someone about what I did today or what I've done this week. And a lot of it is still like, I'll be like, oh, I played really well today, I didn't play that well today. But it is this way for me to kind of go like, I still can talk to him. It's not the same and it never will be the same, but it's a way for me to still kind of like still check in. And that's something that's really important to me. And I think I'll probably do that for like probably the rest of my life.
I think personally for me, I found writing it down is really helpful. Even if it's not structured and you just splurge everything you're thinking, especially when you've had like a really stressful day, because uni is a lot. Sometimes you do just walk in the front door and you just need to tell someone. I think that's a really nice thing to do, and to keep it up you still do it on a Wednesday after games.
Yeah.
It's got some familiarity. That is really nice. I really like how you've done the money box idea. I wish I thought of that, because back when my sister passed, it must have been like a couple weeks, months after, I wrote a letter to her in a notebook. It's not something I want to read now, but at some point last year, I burnt it, and a year later, I'm regretting it. But I think that was because it was so open and there, and anyone could flick through and just see it. And yeah, having like a little tucked away space is really nice. Or just even if someone was to do a memory box idea and, write a letter, put it in an envelope, but you don't send it, you just put it away. I've heard of those being really helpful before. We mentioned earlier about telling people at uni, people we're meeting for the first time. And I don't know if you get this as well, but I awkwardly laugh when I'm telling people and I can't stop it. One girl at secondary school got really funny because I was laughing about it, and I was like, I don't know how else to say it. I do feel sad about it, obviously, but you're still in shock. You never thought you would be saying something like that. So when people ask me and you said about their responses, oh, okay, I always find myself telling them way too much to feel that silence of their reaction. And then afterwards, I'm like, right, now you know everything. And I kind of didn't want you to at this time. Have you had anything like that?
I definitely do the same thing where you kind of say it and you awkwardly kind of like the half laugh. Because I think you're right. I think it is like you can't, I still can't quite believe it every time I have to say it out loud. I'm like, oh, yeah, that is true. So I think I'm still trying to work out how to kind of say it in a way that seems a bit more casual. But I'm also in my head, I'm like, well, it's not casual. It's not like not normal. I have to say it to someone, I will just say it and kind of move past it because it's something that I've had to accept. They're just going to have to as well. There's kind of like, maybe harsh as it sounds, if I have to say it out loud, then you can like, someone else can listen to it and go like, okay, yeah, if that makes sense.
Yes, no, it does. Yeah. So, whilst I was at uni, I got a phone call from my mum saying that my granddad was really ill. Like he was in hospital and he is absolutely fine now. But it was like a real scare of, oh my gosh, I always thought if anything bad happens, then I don't think I could come back up to uni. I would have to go home. And then even now, I have a fear when I'm away that I'm missing out on something really bad. So, yeah, my question is, did you lose your dad whilst you were away at uni, or were you at home?
So I had just moved back the second year. And so I'd been back about 4 weeks when I got a call off my mum saying that he'd come home from work and he was really unwell and they'd had to put me in an ambulance because just something wasn't right. And I was like, oh, well, can I come home? And we knew immediately that it was going to be kind of bad, but we didn't know kind of the extent or what was really happening. But this was also the end of 2020. So it was all during lockdown. So we were told like, you can't come home. And then over the next couple of days, as soon as it became clear of like, okay, he's gone into a coma, we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what's going to happen next. You're just sort of waiting to be told whether you can go home. And because I was at university in England and I live in Wales, there was rules about getting back over the border. So for me, it was 5 weeks of like every day getting a phone call off my mum kind of going, this is what's happening, this is the next news. And I think it was 5 weeks of none of us really admitting that we knew that he was going to pass away at the end of it. It's like, it got to the point where they were like, so many organs of his had failed, like he had sepsis. But for me, I kind of didn't admit that to anyone but my best friend, who on that first night, I texted and I was like, I think my dad's going to die and I don't really know what to do. And other people around me definitely knew that he was ill, but no one really knew how bad it was. So when it did happen, and I got the call basically saying like, oh, yeah, your dad's passed away this afternoon. And my grandparents were like, we'll come get you tomorrow morning, because it was in the evening. And they didn't want to leave my mum on her own, obviously, to come drive and get me. So they're like, we'll come first thing in the morning. And I remember I rang my brother, spoke to him, and I texted my best friend, who again was the only one who knew. And I just said, hey, are you doing anything right now? And he went, oh, I'm just playing some games with another friend. What's up? And I didn't reply. And he went, oh, do you need me? And then a few minutes later, he went, are you okay? And I didn't reply to that because I just couldn't bring myself to kind of type anything out. And he just rang me and he said he knew immediately. And still 2.5 years later, he's like, yeah, I knew immediately because you didn't say anything. but we didn't sit and talk about it. We sat on the phone and I cried. And then he was like walking around London just so he didn't have to sit in his house. So he was like, this is a private conversation. But we started arguing over how to like pronounce different types of animals, because he was like, you need a distraction. We're just going to get a bit silly. But it was still this moment of like my best friend going, I'm here for you. Like, I don't understand how you feel. But he's like, I know you need someone. I know you're kind of like on your own, but I will be here for you. And then it was kind of the next day, that drive home felt like a year. And the entire time going like, if I hadn't have moved away, I wouldn't be in this car right now. I would already be there. And then when I went back to uni, I was like still in that kind of mood. And I was like, no, because he wouldn't want me to not be at university, because he was so proud when I was like, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing. And I remember like, do you know when you get your UCAS notification, like, oh, you've been offered this place, and you're like, oh my God, it's so exciting. Like, I remember sending a screenshot of that to my dad while he was at work, and he was so happy. He was like, I'm so proud of you. And I just remember so clearly that day. So I was like, no, I'm going to stay at uni. I'm going to do this. And it was the same kind of thing of, you do feel like, oh, I need to be at home, but also if I go home now, then am I ever going to want to go? Because at home's not the same place without this person. Is there any advice that you would kind of give to your younger self based on what you know now?
Yes, I think I would definitely say talk more, and also to accept the fact that help early on, like everyone tries to force counselling, therapy and whatever to try and help you at the start, but for me it didn't work. I tried therapists and counsellors and I think I cancelled all of them. I went through a good couple people and it wasn't right, and for a couple years after that I always had the mindset of it's not worth it, don't try it. And now I feel like it could be something that would be beneficial. So when I go back to uni, I would be open to the idea if someone mentioned, oh, maybe you should talk to someone, and I'll be like, yeah, I think I can have a conversation about it. So basically, to my younger self, don't be put off by if one method of help doesn't work for you, or if you don't feel like it's the right time to talk about it, don't force it. I probably thought it was a really straightforward process of I'm going to be sad and then I'll get over it, but it is like people describe grief as like coming and going in waves, and you feel all the emotions at whatever time. There is no order, and that is definitely something that I think it would be good for not only my younger self to know, but for people supporting young persons who are grieving, that the help you're giving someone isn't always what they need at that moment in time. Do you have any support or advice that you would give your younger self?
I think the biggest one is like, just let yourself feel it, which is similar to what you said. I think definitely that first couple of weeks I was like trying to be on top of everything, trying to organize everything, but I didn't really take time for me to kind of go, oh, I'm heartbroken. Let yourself feel it. Let yourself feel all the emotions. But similar to what you said, just it's okay to talk about it, whether it is kind of like with a professional, just with your friends. It took me maybe 6-7 months before I told anyone other than my best friend what had actually happened. Like, we were on holiday and we were sat around a campfire and someone kind of went, oh, you never really like told us. And I kind of went, oh, and that was the first time I told anyone this, like the actual story. And I sort of think if I'd have talked about it a bit earlier, I would have felt a bit better. I think for me, there was an element of like, oh, I don't want to look like I'm sad all the time. I don't want to be like embarrassed. But it is what it is. It's a weird situation to be in, that you've lost someone, and it's going to be weird. And if someone kind of maybe doesn't know how to react to that, that's not your fault. And you can kind of just go, that's fine. And you can move on.
Yeah. Because I know people have expectations of, oh, you should still be sad, you should still be grieving, or some people are like, oh, aren't you over that by now? And you don't know yourself what you're feeling, and always trying to please other people with, okay, it's been an amount of time. No one else around me is talking about it anymore, so maybe I shouldn't. But it is good to talk about it, and definitely, like we said earlier about writing things down, I think that is really helpful.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about it, but you don't necessarily want people to hear.
Yeah. I think sometimes just getting it out is the important thing.
Yeah. I mean, I just suddenly remembered I did this for, a good couple of weeks or so after she passed. I would sit outside my front doorstep, like shut the porch door, shut the front door, and I'd listen to the same 2 songs, like just on repeat. I remember one of my neighbours coming up to me one time and went, "What's wrong? What are you doing?" And he was like 11 at the time, and obviously trying to explain how she died as well, because she took her own life, and most children that age don't really know what that entails. So I remember saying it really bluntly to him, and I think that was probably one of the last times I sat outside and listened to music at the front of my road where everyone is. But yeah, just listen to these certain songs which I can't listen to anymore. They were really helpful in the moment, and I can't listen to them now.
No, I get you. So I think we both kind of found that moving away to university has given us such a different perspective on our grief and how we deal with it and how we carry it with us. I think obviously for me, it's kind of like keeping things of my dad's with me, whether it's clothing or something of his, or like his, like any of his music type thing.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more talking about my sister more, and now that I'm away, bringing up her in conversation with my parents back home, and trying to keep a part of her where I am, because I'm moving on in my life. I mean, I'm getting older. I know I'm only 19, but I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to the age that she was when she passed. So trying to keep a part of her with me. And yeah, I think it's just important to me to allow myself to feel my grief whilst I'm at uni.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Grief in Common by Winston's Wish, and thank you to Abigail for being such a great guest.
Thank you.
Grief in Common is a podcast run by the Winston's Wish youth team. The topics of conversation aim to provide comfort and make a difference to other young grieving people over the age of 13.
We hope to give listeners the confidence to talk about their own grief journey.
It's rare to be able to listen to other young people being open and honest about their grief and how they're feeling.
We hope this podcast reaches young grieving people everywhere and helps them to feel less alone.
From teenagers to young adults, students to professionals, we're all different, but we've all got grief in common.
Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Thank you.